Welcome back to Hoshido Eternal. Today we will be discussing about the samurai. Goku and I will dive deep into the samurai, what they wear, the weapons they use, and how they looked in different eras because there are different eras of samurai that even stem back from as far back as like even the 1100s and even further beyond that. So we'll be going more and more in depth, discussing those kind of samurai and things that people may or may have not know about samurai. So Goku, go ahead and put those slides up there.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Here we go. I love this. Okay, so I will have to say I am a huge nerd for samurai. I love samurai stuff. So um, as we have a depiction of a Japanese emperor, that's like I believe that is like a painting depiction of what emperor would look like back then. And yes, it would be wearing something fancy. And of course, here in this slide, we have what seems to be a samurai lord, and everyone bowing down to that lord.
What is that image on the top right? Like on the top of like the canopy or their house? What is that?
Okay, so on the canopy that they have over there, that would be their family crest. And usually they would represent their family crest a lot, notably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is your archer thing you're talking about, right?
Right. So now that we're going, you can pause the slides here if you could.
Oh yeah.
So we'll bounce right into talking about like what is a samurai, what is their armor, um, and whatnot. So the big question is, what is a samurai? Well, I'll go by the classical definition of what a samurai is. And there's another term that they go by. They call them bushi, which is warrior in Japanese. And samurai would also mean to serve or servant. That's normally what samurai were. Now, mind you, even during the 1100s, they expanded on the samurai over time. And I would say the rulings behind what a samurai is. So I guess you can say in each era there would be, different. They would add on like a different subset of rules to the samurai. Let's dive into what's up.
One question. So you see his arrow, like what is that called on his back? And holding all the arrows.
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. It's actually not on his back. It's actually on his hip. Because realistically, and this I'm not going too deep into European history with archers as well. Archers realistically would not have quivers on their back. They would have them on their hips. There's a reason for that. So because on the back, it's harder to just get the arrow from your back, and it takes a longer time to load your bow.
Oh, so you're saying like it's one motion, like they slide and then pull it up rather than going to their back, like reaching.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and
you have your bow in your. He probably has it in his right hand, right? So it'd be easier to just like grab them, slide them in there real quick. Okay.
Right, and then when they have to move, they actually push up their quiver, so that way their arrows are facing right side up just a bit, so that way their arrows don't fly out. Because what people don't know is that when samurai's main weaponry are actually the bows, long bows, I believe. Those are also called yumi. Yumi are these really long bows that they use, and that's actually one of their main weapons they use. And part of their tactics is that they would be on horseback and they would shoot their enemies from horseback with these yumi bows, and they would pepper spray them with a barrage of arrows. And then when the enemy comes close enough, that's when they charge with their horses and attack them. So it's kind of like a tactic where when the enemy gets close, pepper them with arrows, so the less of the enemy they would have to deal with.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
That's a good skill. One other thing. What are the antlers or something on the top of his head?
Oh, the
On his
antlers.
helmet. Yeah, you see them?
Hmm. That, I mean, honestly, that's more for design.
Oh, okay.
If
It doesn't
anything,
really represent anything like their.
no, actually, it does. It represents their spirit of their clan
Oh,
with the
okay.
way their armor is made. There's more to it. Like it's like a crest on their helmet. They usually would have like their family crest embedded on the helmet with whatever design that they put on there.
What is it made out of? Do you know? Like,
Well, from
is
what
it?
you're seeing right there, that's I believe an antler. That's probably made out of their deer that they have.
Oh, okay, okay. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, then that goes by different points. They would probably go by that too, right? Like how we go down in Texas and all that stuff. Like how long the deer's. I'm not 100% sure how long the deer is, like how old the deer is, was by how big their, like how many antlers they have. I don't really know how that works.
Um, I'm not really. I'm
Because
not.
they say
That's
like
a good
five.
question.
Because they always say like 5 tier, or is that what's called, or five something? I Sorry if I'm butchering this, guys. I don't really
No,
know.
no,
I'm
no,
just a
no, no.
vegan, you
You're
know.
fine. I actually don't really know. Every samurai's armor is different by design because they're not all the same thing, and depending on the region, you or what they would call prefecture, over in Japan, like depending on what region prefecture that they're from or reside from, and depending on the clan they reside from, that's what their armor is designed based off of. Everyone's armor, just like the medieval knights, you'll notice that there's always like different designs for medieval knights, and they would always have flags resembling their emblems of where the family they come from.
Okay.
And of course, over that would be like, representing the country that they serve for. So, in same thing in Japan's case with the samurai, they would always have their family crest, as their banner flying around. Either they would have like sometimes samurai would have banners on their back to represent them, and the banners are actually a very important part of their warfare because it would show which family is going in to attack whatever clan, other opposing clan. It would show that kind of thing on the battlefield. I know there's a lot of people that don't understand like organized or line battle, but that's kind of the battles that they did back in the day. Not so much guerrilla, but I guess you can say with the samurais, it's a mix of, respectful battle and guerrilla warfare, I would say.
Okay.
Because when you clash in the middle of a battlefield, you can actually put on the slides. They'll kind of portray some battlefield battles there. In fact, here's a good example from The Last Samurai. You'll see right here in the background, with Tom Cruise in the background. You'll notice that the samurai are attacking Japanese Imperials. The Japanese. This goes too far into an era of like this is like more in the late 1800s, where the samurai are in a rapid decline, where Japan wants to more modernize, and the samurai were pushed away from their own system of the hierarchy system, their caste system of Japan, where they no longer are in need of military service because the emperor at this point in time in the late 1800s wanted a more modernized, military modernized Japan to catch up with, the foreigners. Main specifically like, the Europeans that, are more and more advancing. And during that time, technology has been rapidly advancing, and the samurai is still an old system of their old time. And if I were to say the samurai is a representation of their culture and tradition that they're trying to upkeep, that will clash with modern times. Because traditionalism and modernism cannot be in the same place. Yeah, and it's what caused what we call what they called in history the Satsuma Rebellion, where the samurai rebelled against the Imperials and the rapid modernization of Japan, where the samurai thought that Japan was modernizing too fast. But let's bounce back to much more earlier periods of Japan. For example, we'll talk about their armor. Now, there are so many periods, and there's so many different styled armor. I think I gave you some of the pictures representing those armor, but just to talk about some of them in the Heian period of around 794 to 1185, you'll notice that there are different variant samurai armor. I probably won't go too much in detail about it, but what is known is that their armor has changed over time. And I think we have like a depiction of. I think I sent you some pictures, right?
Yes,
There we go. All right, so now we're looking at this. If just on top of my head, I could be wrong on the time period for this specific armor, but what I can tell you that this is a later period samurai armor, somewhere in the middle period of the samurai golden era. So I would say this armor would be more of a 1300 or 1200s type of armor. You'll notice that it has like scale like on it on its dough, the dough meaning the chest piece, and then you'll see the shoulder pauldrons there. Those are actually not called pauldrons, but they're called something else. I need to find where that is. Give me a second. Alright, so we have the kote, which are the sleeves of the armor. We have the mempo, which is the mask. We have the kabuto, which is the helmet. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's a good depiction.
There we go.
We have the do, which is the chest piece of the armor. We have the sun ate, which is the greaves, and haidate, which is the kusis, which is again all part of the armor. They all form the armor, and the armor is mainly laced together. So that's the uniqueness about this kind of armor.
Like
it's not like
so much armor for the leg, like past the knees.
Oh yeah, there is. It and funny enough, it is actually pretty heavy. There's actually reasons why they wear a really heavy armor like that. Surprisingly enough, because the armor, if you notice, like even when you look at Tom Cruise and the armor that he's wearing, you'll notice that there's other layers underneath it, and yes, you will be sweating a lot underneath that armor. That's why they wear garbs underneath it. Like there's a hakama underneath that armor, and then on top of that hakama, there's like other leather wear that they put on top of that. Then the armor goes on top of that.
What is the hakama?
A hakama it would be like a long skirt,
like mesh something, like helping breathing or what?
It isn't. It's not so much that it helps breathing. It's just their traditional garb that they wear.
Oh, okay.
And the hakama just goes right under. And you'll notice that even with Tom Cruise armor, you'll notice that there's like 3 armor pieces like separated.
Yeah, it seems like he has 3 different pieces. He has like a cloth kind of thing underneath, and then a checkered thing, and then like I guess a shield kind of metal mesh on top of it.
Well, actually, it's not metal. That's the interesting part.
What is it, leather?
Hold on. I think I have it right here. I don't know how to pronounce it. It should be
something that help with slashing, right?
It's lamulaire. armor. Lamlar armor. There we go. It's similar to that.
Oh, okay.
And let me get actual detail on how they would. It's made out of like iron or steel rivets, with leather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and most Eastern Asian countries use it. And even in the Middle East, they've used this before. But Japan was known for their armor to use a lot of that. Now you'll notice that with their armor is always uniquely designed when it comes to color, the crest.
Oh yeah,
So,
you can see how much detail. Like Tom Cruise already has that checkered pen. Look at the way everything else is.
yeah, no, okay. So you see that where the checkered armor part? No, when a blade hits it, it's kind of like plate mail. It's just harder to slice through. So if he were to get hit by like a edge point, it's not easy to pierce through it. Again, there might be other different designs of armor, and I'm not claiming to be a professional armor expert here.
No, but I think you're right
Yeah.
because usually the first layer, if I remember correctly, the first layer was like the piercing one, to where it avoids to anything you stabbing at it with a blunt item or whatever will actually press into it because of the way the strands go. I forget. It's like a weird crossway that you would do. So it actually goes that. Then the next layer is the slash one, I guess they say, because of the way the grains go, like the way the fibers go, to where when you slice it, it has to cut through a lot of fiber to get to your skin.
Exactly.
I remember I remember a lot of these little things back in the day. I just remember how they had the layer. But I don't remember the third layer. Maybe the third layer was only basically a mesh or something, right? Like your clothing,
Well,
kinda.
I don't know if they use too much garb, but they you're right with one thing. They do have a lot underneath, like that armor, which makes them rather heavy in combat.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like you see how they walk, they kind of like swivel. Like gotta go this way, gotta go that way.
That's why horses are very prominent when they're traveling around. Because moving
their top
around
part
is
of their
difficult.
body mostly has to be the mobile part, right?
Because that's why they rely on their samurai horses that are specifically trained to carry these heavy warriors on combat. And that only goes to show. I mean, like, the one thing that's also very interesting that people don't really reference a lot when it comes to talking about samurai is that there's something called the onabushi, and those are women who fought alongside their samurai, whether they were their husbands or they just fought alongside them. But there's even women that fought alongside them. Now, are they declared as samurai? I don't think so, but there were warrior women that were trained like samurai that fought alongside them in battle. I don't know if I sent you a picture of that one, but they're called the onabushi.
Onabushi? Come on.
Which directly translates to woman warrior. Now, the interesting part of the onabushi is that I don't think they were wearing too much armor, but normally, they, just like the samurai, they also have long yumi bows, and they're also equipped with something called the naginata. And they're also on horseback, so that makes them extremely versatile. So just like what I was saying with their tactics, normally they would pepper their enemies with arrows, and then when they peppered them enough, they would charge with their naginatas out, and they would probably slay a huge amount of enemies.
You say like Onibus?
Ona,
Like,
which is
Ona.
ONNA, and then Bushi.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's check this out. Let's see what
The
we got.
samurai are fucking amazing, man. I'm just so like zeroed in on like how cool these see, okay, so there's some
Wow.
depiction of samurai women, or not samurai women, but like women warriors. Like they were trained like the samurai. And if anyone asks, yes, they went into battle with their husbands, and they died alongside their husbands.
That's crazy.
It's fucking cool. Yeah, like the fact that they go out in
Look at
battle.
look at that. She's ready. She's ready to go.
Oh yeah, we can see that right there. Yeah. And yeah,
I mean,
just like
so
their
on the left side, look at that. It gets like a whole. That's the whole. Like, just the way they were writing this stuff. It's crazy. The armor is insane.
Mhm.
I can just imagine
Now,
because you think how long it takes to make armor like that back then.
or think about how long it takes to put it on.
Yeah, oh, I can only imagine.
That's why they're always prepared ahead of time. When they know battle is about to come, they prepare at least like a good 4 or 5 hours ahead of time, and they wait.
What is this
You know,
called in her hair?
which
Do you see that in the middle picture? Is it a piece of
I
Is it a piece of
I'm
bamboo? That's not.
I'm actually not so sure. In that particular picture, I am not sure. I cannot tell you.
I mean, it looks insane. Looks like a lot of work. Let's see if I can pull up. Oh, okay. This is who it is. Okay, so. Why is it showing just?
See, like the samurai are very interesting here.
Yeah. Samurai usually brings forth a vision of a guy in traditional Japanese
Okay,
armor.
well, I
Yeah,
never
okay,
heard of
wow.
that term before. Ona bugeisha, which is weird because it sounds like they combined warrior and geisha together. Let me search that up.
Okay. Let's see. Let me give it a zoom in.
That's a very interesting. Hold on, like
There we go.
there's an actual Ona bugeisha literally means warrior, woman warrior.
There we go.
These samurai were trained in martial arts strategy and fought alongside samurai to defend their homes, family, and honor. But they're I don't know about
Oh,
bugeisha,
look.
but Onamusha or Onabushi are
The
the
Bushi
common terms.
class, yeah.
Yeah, are the more
It
common
says they
terms.
were the highest class, with only the Empire, the Shogun, and the Daimyo. Daimyo? And, like what and who were Bushi or samurai classes. Wow. Or were the land holding lords.
Now, I was actually going to briefly talk about this while we're on the topic of Onabushi. Now, there's this misconception, especially in the martial arts field for martial art weaponry, that there's a misconception that naginatas were meant for women. That is not true. Naginatas just happen to be the most effective on the battlefield. Not only did the woman use the naginata, and we'll talk about the naginata in a bit and weapons, but not only did they use the naginata, which is what looks like a long halberd in European terms, the samurai also used it, and it was actually one of the most common weapons you would see. It's either that or the yari. Yari is a long spear. Those two weapons were like the most common to see on the battlefield. Now, I know a lot of people will debate me on this, but yes, for those that say that swords were never used, that is historically incorrect. Swords were commonly used, especially when their weapons would break, and that is a very common thing that happens on the battlefield. Like you would lose your weapon on the battlefield, like your main weapon, which would be either a bow or a spear, and they would have to swap to something else, which commonly is, their uchi katana or taichi, or the tachi is like, one of the first variants of what would be a katana today. Katana is actually, a modern sword. Like it was developed like really like way later. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Now that you pull it up.
Right on it.
Yeah. So, what is a katana? A katana is a Japanese sword characterized by a curved single-edged blade with a circular or squared guard and long grip to accommodate two hands. Developed later than the tachi, it was used by samurai in the feudal Japan, worn by the edge facing upward. They're referring to the tachi. The tachi is an older form of a katana. Oh, there's the tachi right there. You can actually click that. No, those are katanas. Those are actual modern day katanas. Those are like modern. Those are from our time. Yeah. Okay, so that's a tachi. Now, the tachi, is more of the ones that the samurai use. Tachi or the uchi katana. And mind you, the tachi and uchi katana are, I guess you can say, the ancestors of the katana.
Man, that looks amazing.
Yeah, if you click that picture, you'll see like a zoomed in version
Look at
of
that.
Yeah. Pretty cool, right? Now you see how the sword is always pointing downwards? That's commonly how you would wear it. Either downwards or upwards.
So all these symbols. So I know how. Let me actually educate me on the sword edge right here. Now I've heard things that people said that when there's like little engraving things, I guess like little rivets that go through every one. That's how many that samurai has taken somebody's life. Is that true?
You said rivets would be on the katana?
They're like little indention, like little marks, like little round, like this. And apparently, no.
That's not what that is. No, that's actually just design.
Just design, right? Okay.
That's just design. Sometimes crest design to symbolize where that's what that sword is representing.
So another thing, they would put pins in between here.
Yeah.
Saying what were those little pins meant? What did they mean?
So the wooden pins.
Yeah,
there's actually a name. There's a little name for that. The ones that go into the handle itself. Is just to keep the sword in place, the handle and sword.
Oh, so they have no meaning of it.
No, but sometimes on the handle. So if you look on the upper picture, the blacksmith will always put his engraved name on there to show where the sword, who forged the sword.
Okay, so that's this part right here. You would hit it, right? You would turn it and hit it, and this would come off, and you could read it's on the sword part, right?
Yeah, so the handle can come off with the two wooden pegs. It can come off, and once that comes off, you can pull the handle off, and it looks like you'll see the whole tang of the sword.
Okay.
Yeah, and from there you'll see that there could be a blacksmith name engraving, which shows how authentic it is.
That right here, these holes.
The what? Oh, the 3 holes there.
Yeah, right here. That's where those pins would go, and this is where they have the engraving. That's probably the engraving right here.
Yeah. Normally, it's like in modern day katanas, you'll see that there's only 2. But you'll notice with older katana or older tachi and uchi katana that there's like 3, maybe even 4. Again, for anyone watching, you can correct me if I'm wrong with that. But from what I gather and from what I know personally, that there are 3 or 2 holes that would hold the whole sword together with the handle. Yeah, they said that they felt like using the wooden pegs would be a much simple method. So that right here is a tachi, and mainly they would have that strapped on their waist side, usually on the left. And the reason why they would have it facing downwards is so that way, like once they draw the sword, at least it's already in an attacking motion. So if there's like an enemy to the side of you while you're on your horse, you can easily slash them. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? So there's something that in Japan, the Japanese samurai would do is that normally when they're on the battlefield, they would always have a set of 3 swords on them. Now, the main sword would be either their uchikatana or tachi. The other 2 would be their tanto and wakasashi. Now, the tanto is what you would consider a large dagger. A wakasashi is more of like a middle-sized sword. It's smaller than a regular katana, and it's definitely smaller than your average tachi or uchi katana. And there's a reason for that. I think the use of 3 swords came about in a much later time, which I believe is either during or after the Battle of Sekigahara, which is like their final battle of unifying all of Japan under one shogun, which was later Tokugawa. If no one knows who Tokugawa is, he is Lord Tokugawa Ieyasu. He used to serve under Lord Oda Nobunaga, who was, considered a tyrant by many. But I won't go too in-depth with that, because that would be discussing a whole history of every warlord. But I think the use of having the 3 swords that I mentioned, usually on your waist, specifically on your left side, I think that came about during that time, during the Sengoku era, and maybe after the period of the Sekigahara battle, or it came about just before the 1700s actually hit. Because after the Tokugawa took control of unifying all of Japan, they made a lot of changes in Japan. And for one, I think they had at least a good 200 years of peace in Japan, where they were completely isolated from the rest of the world, because the Portuguese that came by kind of did some terrible stuff, which is they sold them guns, tried to force Christianity on Japan, which almost succeeded. And then they did the one thing that Europeans were known for: slavery. Japanese women and children were their prime targets, and it was known that Japanese women and children were sold off into slavery or they were forced into sex slaves for their current slaves, or for many other slave masters, which angered Japan. Well, most notably, I think it's Hideyoshi at the time. It angered Hideyoshi, who demanded to the Portuguese king to return the Japanese people that they've stolen from Japan, which I think they did, but they also were given the wrong type of people, like Koreans and Chinese, because at the time Europeans could not tell apart between Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. Yeah, which people don't really talk about that much, but I'm gonna throw a little history there. And if it wasn't for the Portuguese that came by, they're the reasons why the samurai obtained the matchlocks. Or if anyone knows what the matchlock guns were, they were given matchlock guns, and Japan acquired its first gun arsenal, which started shaping Japan into a different era, especially during the Sengoku era. this is where Oda Nobunaga, which I think I sent you a picture of Oda Nobunaga, or at least a depiction of what he may have looked like through some Japanese art. Um, I don't know if you still have that picture on the slider somewhere. It should be there.
Um,
Let's see where that is.
oh, I got it.
I like this picture a lot. You already see what I was already depicting. So you'll see that there's a woman next to their samurai. You'll see the samurai already charging in with his bow, the Yumi,
Oh, that's
and
really big.
already in that one picture already describes what I was talking about. Like you'll see him charging in with a naginata, another guy with a matchlock gun. Like it again, the weapons I mentioned are very common in the battlefield. Um, I don't know if we can see this, but you'll see again. You'll see a depiction of.
There we
Okay,
go.
there we go.
So sorry, guys. Bear with me.
There we go. No, you're good. You're good. So you see this picture here? I
There we go.
believe this was actually samurai with the matchlock.
What are those?
What happened?
I said, what are these weapons right there that they're using?
But they're holding currently.
Yeah.
Though that's the matchlock gun.
So I've never.
I think there's a different name for it, but like I'm pretty sure. Let me see. What they called the smoking gun. Um,
So they had gunpowder or what?
yes, they did because China was a proponent of using a lot of gunpowder at the time. So they always got their gunpowder from China, which became illegal later on. But because Portugal came in and opened trade with Japan during that small time period, Japan had access to a lot of trade to China, and Portugal. I believe Portugal was the one that was, you know, like it was very beneficial for Portugal because now they can enact trade between China and Japan. And Japan was getting textiles and raw material that they needed. And on top of that, they got what they call Tanegashima, also known as matchlock guns or muskets, which were quickly adopted by the samurai. The samurai often used these matchlock guns, but before it got to the samurai fully, there was a group that Oda Nobunaga utilized really fast, which won him the battlefield pretty quickly. He utilized farmers,
Hmm.
like from their own clan, like peasants and farmers. He would equip them with guns. No armor at all, no armor or swords, just pure guns. And Oda Nobunaga utilized a system with his Ashigaru units. Now, Ashigaru units, they usually either had Yari, which is spear, or matchlock. Most notably, it would be both. But he then started utilizing more farmers and peasants to use matchlock guns, and then they did a 3 line system where the first front line. Let's imagine like a whole rectangle, right? And in this rectangle, there's 3 lines of men. Let's say there's 20 in each line, right? 3 lines in this rectangle, right? Rectangle formation. The first line had men kneeling down. The middle line had men just over the ones that are kneeling down. And then we have the ones in the back that would fire after the middle line would kneel down, and the back line would fire, and it would just be a triple volley. And it's such a unique firing. Uh,
That's wow.
yeah, so they would get a
That's
constant
pretty
barrage
good.
on their enemies.
Yeah. So you have a line. Yeah, yeah. they
You have a
just
line barrage, yeah.
it's
So
the same as like what they did back in the day with like their arrow shooters. They front would shoot their arrows, then kneel down while the next crash would do it.
it's kind of similar to that, yes.
And then the
And
third one
they
would
had the
be
same
like
idea.
just the raw, like just the massive of actual armor people running in. That's crazy.
Hmm. And see, the samurai, I believe the samurai use the same exact idea. I don't know if Oda Nobunaga got that idea from the Europeans. I don't think he did. I think he thought of that when he realized how the potential of muskets and firearms that was winning the battlefield. And the thing is, during that time period in the Sengoku period, there were many samurai warlords that would, you know, forbid it. They didn't like the idea of guns.
They thought it was a cheat.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was a
It
dishonorable
was
thing.
dishonorable. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It
but
was something
Oda,
you were using like gods, like using a power beyond what
yeah,
they're
but Lord
physical.
Oda
Yeah.
Nobunaga, he utilized it because he said, "Hey, we're low in numbers of people, but
Mm-hmm.
I have farmers and peasants that are looking for more ways of gaining money. So why not equip them with guns? And why not?" And it really did decimate the battlefield. Like he almost conquered all of Japan because of how he utilized this strategy.
That's so
'Cause-
crazy because you go to like any like karate places, stuff like that. Like going to go train, like you guns and all that stuff. Not yeah, not their thing. You know, like there was it's defense. Use what you
mhm.
have.
Yeah, and when Oda Nobunaga took in something that was foreign, and I'm just gonna note this here because I know everyone would want me to mention it. Yes, Oda Nobunaga not only took in guns from the Portuguese and missionary Christians, he also took in an African man named Yasuke that he named. Now, not a lot is known about Yasuke, and I won't talk about it in this podcast because I know how controversial Yasuke has become now that people have discovered Yasuke, and I was hoping to talk about it in our earlier podcast, but um, Yasuke is indeed an African, and he was indeed brought to Japan with missionary Jewits that were trying to spread Christianity to Japan at the time. And I believe this missionary Christian came from, Rome itself, the Vatican, because at the time the Vatican in Rome were in charge of Christianity. The whole figurehead with the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
So when he sent Jewits around the world, especially where they landed in Japan, and this is just a historical note, and I know this will. I don't want it to cause too much controversy. It is what is known. Yasuke was indeed a slave. Uh, the one thing that missionaries and Christians were known to do was to, obtain slaves, buy and own slaves, and that is one notable thing they did in the past. And further proof of that in the old, I believe it's in the Old Testament. Someone out there that may listen to this, you may correct me or post a source material if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this was in the Bible itself. The Bible has stated it is okay to own a slave, which is proof to why Yasuke is indeed a slave of the missionary Jewits that were brought to Kyoto in Japan. It is written down in history, so as of right now, I am seeing that as a fact. I know there's a lot of again. I know there's a lot of
You're
controversy
in a
behind it.
bombshell for this one,
Not really. If it's written down
but it is
in,
written down.
it's written down. So,
It is.
I mean, if people want to turn it controversial, that's one thing. But the one thing we cannot forget is that we cannot deny
Yep.
fact and
Yep. Yep.
history.
Yep.
Things happen in history.
I
Things
absolutely
that,
firmly believe this.
yeah, and it may not be things that we all agree with, It may not be things that we're happy or proud about, but things happen that we all won't like in history. Now, for those that are like, oh, but Yasuke could be this, this, and this, that's all hypothetical and theoretical because there's no more information about Yasuke. And like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into Yasuke. Um, Yasuke was favored by Oda Nobunaga, and a lot of people feared Yasuke because, again, this is an isolated country that's never seen a black African in Japan before. To them, he is a giant. They have no idea what an African is. They have no idea of their existence. I want everyone to keep that in mind. This is the first time that during this time period in like around the 1500s, this is the first time they're seeing a black African. Oda Nobunaga thought that Yasuke was extremely dirty, so he told his servants to scrub him down, scrub his skin, his black skin, only to find out that his black skin cannot be scrubbed off, realizing that his skin is actually black. And I want everyone to keep in mind how alien that is to people that never seen black people before. That's all I have to say regards to Yasuke. I promise I will continue more of that on another podcast. But going back to Samurai, um, Oda Nobunaga is actually known to take in a lot of foreign things around that time period, especially when he spoke. He oftenly spoke to foreigners that came in, learned about their ways, learned about their odd trinkets that they brought with them. He learned about the Bible. Again, it's unconfirmed whether or not Oda Nobunaga was Christian or not. It was not really mentioned. There are evidence pointing that he was converted to Christianity, but again, all is not known. We don't know if that's true or not. And again, there's things that can be vastly or grossly mistranslated, like how people believe Yasuke is a samurai when he's not. He is just a simple sword bearer. But again, because Oda Nobunaga utilized the matchlock and gave it to the Ashigaru, because Ashigaru are big in numbers, because what do they have high number of on their lands that isn't your everyday soldiers, and that's peasants and farmers. Why not utilize them, right? So that's how Oda Nobunaga came very close to unifying all Japan until he was betrayed by Mitsuhide Akachi, which is one of his loyal generals who betrayed Oda Nobunaga. Again, I'll get more to the history of warlords on another podcast. But going back to their weapons, there's a whole lot to go and talk about. I think we already talked about the Tanto, the Wakasashi, and the Uchikatana, the Tachi, but we have not talked too much about the Naginata, which I'll have you pull up if you can, Goku.
Yep.
Yep, take your time with that.
Alright, where we at?
We're now going to the Naginata.
Ooh, look at this.
Okay. See, I know it says this in the Wikipedia, but it is not. It's not true. It's just like what I was saying earlier. It is stereotyped to be a woman's weapon. It is not true. Men also use the naginata. So if people go like, "Oh, but it's on Wikipedia," well, it's also on the history of Japan. It's also in a lot of their scribes, whatever they put it on. It's also in their documents that they wrote it in. Yeah, um, men also use the naginata. So surprisingly enough. There you go. It's what I was saying. They gave it to the Ashigaru as well. Either the Yari or Naginata was given to the Ashigaru. They're also no, if you. I know I said that word a lot. Ashigaru is basically foot soldiers. Are they exactly samurai? No, they're not. They're just conscripted soldiers that you can just easily obtain in vast numbers.
Blades
But
are
it is,
okay.
yeah, but as you can see, it is basically a glaive or halberd, as you would call it. It is similar to other designs from other countries, but Japan made theirs very specific. It
Oh
is,
wow.
if you see the blade, it is more specific. It's closely resembles more of a, you know, katana, if anything, but it's just at a longer handle. You see that one hole? That's what's holding the whole entire thing together.
Yeah, that one little hole.
Yes.
That little guy. That one little hole. Oh wait.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. No, there it
Because
is.
it's one handle, one large handle. Oh,
Wow.
there
There it is. There it is. There it is.
we go. Yeah,
Zoom
that
out.
one
There
hole
you go.
holds the handle together with the blade. Um, and yes, it is a long-ranged weapon. And just like the Yari, this weapon
Wow.
really exploded on the battlefield. It is again a very common weapon to have on the battlefield. It was very commonly used. I'm certain that this has a huge advantage against other type of weapons. Not the matchlock, of course, but especially if you're on horseback, imagine how terrifying that is when you're seeing someone with a naginata and they're swinging that around.
Oh my god. I think it would
Yeah.
rip you in half.
Mm-hmm. And there were
Look
several
how
of them.
big that thing is.
Oh yeah, it's
Look at
gigantic.
that.
If you think that's terrifying, we're gonna go to the next weapon, the nagamaki, and it's and the other larger sword, the old dachi. We'll get to the old dachi in a second. We'll go to the nagamaki first.
Uh-oh.
So you'll see the nagamaki. You can click that. There is some history with the nagamaki.
There we go.
All right, if you scroll down just a bit, there we go. Yes, it is a type of large sword that they used. I know it fell out of grace later in a certain period. I think in like the 1300s it fell out of grace. Uh, it's very similar to the Odachi, but it's not as big. But it is a large sword, just like the Naginata. This large sword, the Nagamaki, held the same purpose as a Naginata at that time period. Remember when I was saying that like weapons evolved with the samurai over time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is one of them. I think the idea of the naginata came about because of the nagamaki. I could be wrong, but again, the nagamaki is more of you know,
They won't even
it's
let me
more of a
zoom in.
great sword, if anything.
What?
Uh,
What?
and yet, yeah, you're seeing that right.
What?
26.17, 19 point. It's approximately that long in Tang.
Wow. Look at this.
That's crazy, right? You want to know something crazy,
So is
Goku?
there there's four little that's where you put the pegs, I guess?
Yeah, the wooden pegs to hold it
Yeah,
together. Yeah.
wow.
You want to know something crazy, Goku? I have one.
You have this.
Yeah, I have
Just
one.
like
Yeah,
that. Just like that.
that one. Okay, so that one's more old. Mine is more modern, if I were to
Does it
say.
have that cool red and gold?
Mine is more pure black and traditional.
Okay.
That the one you're seeing right there, that's also very traditional, but that's from like that's probably way in the past.
Like the
Again, I can't.
1100s?
Maybe I don't know.
That's such a thing.
That could either be a replica and not exactly this exact one, but again, that's what it would look like on the fucking battlefield. Like, those things are
It's
terrifying,
fucking amazing. Wow.
right?
Wow.
They have like see the samurai and the warriors of Japan utilize weapons like this back then, and they would always evolve their weapons as the battle, like war and battle has always evolved. Especially with the introduction of guns. The matchlock guns really changed Japan when it hit the 1600s. It really changed the shape of Japan. Guns were a big thing.
Low-ranking soldiers got this.
It wasn't always that the low-ranking soldiers were always using it.
But
At
then,
some
like
point in time,
the big boys still used it too.
what
Said all the
I
big
think there
boys.
was a notable warlord that used it. I think it was like Kenshin or Usugi Kenshin, I
Yeah, yeah,
believe.
yeah, yep, yeah. This guy. Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
he, like from what it was said, like he was known to use like naginatas or nagamakis or even a yari. Like he would always use something with long range.
Wow, what did this guy do? Is that for? Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
Well, when we talk about the samurai and the warlords, that would be this is our product placement here. That would be our next podcast discussing the warlords and whatnot.
Oh yeah. What's this map right here?
That is the map of the provinces of Japan at the time.
Wow, look at that.
The names that you're seeing on there are the name of the family clans, like the Oda that we were just talking about,
Mhm.
the Takeda, the Hojo, the Satake, the Ashina, the Date, the Mogami, the Isugi, the Asakura, the Amago, the Mori, the Otomo, and the Ryuzoa clan. Those are different clans at the time during the Sengoku period.
Wow, I want to be what is it? Mugabe?
Which one? The Amago?
Probably because it's the farthest away from everybody.
No, they're next to the Mori.
Morty's a good
They're like,
guess.
God damn it. All right, so we talked about the Nagamaki. Let's go straight into one of my favorite weapons of all time. I also have this one, the Odachi. It is the longest sword
Which
ever made. It
whoa.
is crazy long. I don't know if any other
Let's
uh,
see.
country or culture has ever crafted a sword this big.
Look at this.
Um,
Look. Here's the qualification right here.
yeah, but this sword would
Wow.
be the fucking biggest ever made.
There's no exact definition of the size. There's no they just like it could be huge. There's no
Yeah, no, it
exact.
can. The like, and see, like the one you're seeing right there is probably not even the biggest one, and I'm sure that's in the Museum of Samurai in Japan somewhere.
Wow.
That it's literally like it's one of the biggest. Like I don't know which one is the biggest one to date, but that's a fucking huge sword. If
look
anything,
at this
I
thing.
it would probably take two people to fucking
Holy
draw that.
crap. Look at that. Look, dude, just think one arm or one hand, one hand. That's like 5 to 6 hands just for that.
Oh, wait a minute. This one is a more recent one, 1844.
Yeah, yeah.
That
This is 1844. What is that? That's a
yeah,
200. Dude.
that's a more recent era Odachi. And again, remember how I told you
Oh yeah, look, that's from
when
the.
war evolves. But
Wow.
here's the funny part about the Odachi. Was it seen often in the battlefield? Absolutely not. I don't think you'll ever really see it depicted, shown in battlefields. But does it have an existence on the battlefield? Yeah, probably. But like I said, it had to take two people to remove the sheath, and then
Yeah.
one person using it.
Look at this right. 221. Now let's go back.
That's 87 inches.
This one right here is about a little bit bigger. Just a little bit bigger. That's freaking huge. Look at that.
Yeah, that is big.
Good.
I told you, the Odachi is probably the most
This is
amazing
this card
weapon
right
ever
here is
created.
a 3x5, whatever the hell is 3x8, 3x8, 3x8. Yeah, so that's 3x8. So if you calculate that, dude, that's big. It's like
I
a
actually want to go to that shrine that houses that Odachi.
god,
Um, because that's I have an Odachi myself, and I know it's nothing in comparison to that.
god damn how
Um,
big that damn thing is.
that thing is humongous. It is the craziest thing
I
I've
want to
ever
see
seen,
that. I
man.
want to see. Is that the blade of it, or
Yeah, that is the blade of it.
so
That's
they're just
indeed the blade.
doing? Okay, so there's
You
gonna be
see
that's
where
good.
you see
Holy
where the
crap!
wood is holding the swords?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, so there's like a golden peg just before that wooden handle on the left side.
Uh huh.
From there to the tip is how long that blade is.
Good
And
god.
mind you, the handle's also humongous, so you can extend the reach of that,
Imagine that. That thing's so big.
right?
Yeah, look at that. Like that's is like a prediction. What the hell? Wait, what is that? Is that the same thing? That's a spear kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. So now that we talked about the main swords, we'll probably continue talking about that in our part two
Mm-hmm.
of the Samurai podcast. Oh yeah, that's actually very notable. Yeah, I say I told you they probably have used the Nodachi and
That's the
Odachi in history,
yeah. Wow.
but they would equip it on their fucking backs, man. I mean, like, it's really fucking large.
Holy crap! It's probably break your
Hmm.
back.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't know if it was that favored on the battlefield. All I know is it is one of the largest Japanese swords ever created, and I'm always like entertained seeing one. I'm definitely amused by it. Like, I'm definitely like, yeah, I'm a huge fan when it comes to Japanese weapons and katana or uchi katana and whatnot. I'm a huge fan of this. Like, that it's a very impressive weapon. Now, again, I think they mainly used odachis for ceremonial services. And again, there isn't much to note if it was historically used on the battlefield, but this damn blade existed. It is there.
I want that blade.
It's a goddamn big one, I can tell you that. Excuse my language, but it's a huge weapon. All right. But thank you for all that listen to the podcast. We will be going more in depth with the armors and more of the weapons. We'll probably even revisit some of the weapons we talked about here in this podcast. And yes, as I mentioned, some notable names like Oda Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa. We will be discussing more of the warlords in our next Hoshido Eternal podcast, The Samurai.
The
And
good times are still to come.
we also have a little bit of a product placement that we're going to advertise here, and that is Goku's very special and
Oh,
returning
pop, pop, pop! Look at this.
Goku's vegan Hoshido. What is a vegan Hoshido? Find out at our next podcast.
Boop, 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 bam.
Oh my goodness.
That should be coming up next. What will we say? Wednesday?
I
It's
think
in.
we'll have that next Wednesday. Goku here will be talking about how to properly be a vegan and how to be healthy.
Yes, I also explained to you a couple of places. Fun fact of places that I went to that failed miserably. Now these restaurants don't want to hear this, but they will. And they said they're vegan. Let's find out.
On the next episode of Goku's Vegan Shido. All right, guys. Thank you all for being here. Like I said again, for those that are just tuning in and listening now, make sure you hit that follow there. Give us a little support on Hoshido Eternal.
Yep.
Yeah, we are on Kick. We had a little bit of a hiccup using Twitch and Kick at the same time. We will fix that issue more oftenly. So please also follow us there on Kick. I don't think we're gonna be using Twitter because there's a lot of things going crazy over there.
Oh
But you
yeah.
will see most of our updates on our Discord. Our Discord should be provided for you up there
Yep.
on our Twitch screen and our Kick screen. You'll see it provided there. So if you want to get a jump start ahead and figure out what we're doing next for our podcast, it will be right there. I know from our podcast before this one, I advertised that there will be a controversial podcast that was unfortunately canceled. Our Goku here got sick, so it was an
Unfortunately.
emergency. We had to cancel that one.
Gotta
So
take
I
care of the health.
apologize.
We got you. We're back though.
But don't worry, we will be getting back to that. We will be fitting it on a day where we can gather our team, and we will get right back to our controversy podcast talks. And if you like more podcasts, like with just me and Goku, talking about historical and much more serious topics like health and fitness, we will be going straight away into that as well. So look forward to that as well. We will be discussing all forms of that. However, tomorrow we have another podcast. That's right. We're going right back into our martial arts podcast, back to back with the samurai one. So you guys are getting a double dose of this. So for those of you listening on Spotify, which I hope you guys are also following us through there, um, we'll be discussing more about martial arts, self defense, and Goku's martial art. What was it? Tukang Muso?
Wukong Muso. And
Oh,
yeah,
there we
there
go.
will be
Yeah,
plenty. Don't worry, guys. There'll be plenty of new Goku moments going to happen. It's gonna happen. So better stay
all
tuned.
right.
I also want to put out a shout out real quick to Shuru. Shuru actually has been helping us with her imaging. So shout out to Shuru for
Oh yeah,
putting our
definitely
pictures
shout
up there.
outs
Yep.
to our Dark Lord Shuru.
Yep. Dark Lord Shuru is
Oh,
up in here. Yep.
we'll probably throw this as an on our next podcast at the end. We'll make an announcement at the end, but we will be having a podcast about Dark Lords themselves.
Yep.
Who is the best Dark Lord? Stay tuned for that with our Dark Lord Shuru. Will be coming in and explaining to us who is the Dark Lord of them all.
Cha-cha-cha.
Shuru, I know you are here. You can now speak and advertise this yourself.
If you want.
If you want.
Da-da-da.
Our Dark Lord Shuru in the shadows.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
The
all
axolotl
again.
gif in the chat. It shows my expression.
there you go.
There we go. All right, guys. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again. Stay tuned to our next podcast that will take place tomorrow. I think I set a time for it. It'll be at tomorrow at 3 p.m. PST. So for those of you on the East Coast, that will be 6 p.m. EST. And for those of you that are Central Time, that is